And we're live. Today I'm here with Myriam Hadnes. So good to be with you, Myriam.
Thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Of course, always love our conversations. So much
Mm.
fun and so exciting to dive in with someone who's thinking about this stuff probably more than I am, and
Let's see.
which is something to be said because I think I lay awake at night thinking about this stuff. But in the pre-show chat, when we were kind of just warming up and whatnot, you said something remarkable, and we said quite a few things that were remarkable, but one of them was 2020 was the year of the facilitator.
Mm.
What does that mean? Let's unpack that for our listeners a little bit.
So for me, when I think back of this moment in time last year, what happened was that most of our workshops were canceled from one day to the other because nobody understood how we could do this online. And then people in the workplace, they suddenly realized, okay, they have to do all of their work now online and have to have meetings online. So this working from home has been an amplifier. So the meetings that have never worked on site suddenly were even worse. And they realized how important the skill of facilitation is, not only for the workshops, but also for the meetings. And then I think it took them a few months. And now to every facilitator that I talk to, their agendas are just exploding because now everyone on earth understands what facilitation means. And I think it wasn't the case last year. So I think our profession really gained in worldwide respect, maybe. Definitely appreciation. What is your experience?
It's on a few different levels. I think you're right on the appreciation, on the acknowledgement of the fact that the stuff is hard and it's needed, and the potential that it can unlock for teams. I think also when you look at where we were just a year ago, as things were starting to shut down and companies were starting to grapple with the fact that they were all going remote, was this notion that there's a lot of fear and uncertainty. They weren't quite sure how it was all going to happen. There was a lot of concern and frankly, just assumptions that it just can't work. Yeah. Right. And so now, we've done a lot of work to demonstrate that remote facilitation can create results sometimes, and in some cases the benefits outweigh the negatives. As far as now we are looking at when things do open up and we're looking at in-person or hybrid, what's the trade-offs? Like, this is another decision. It's just like picking any other space. Do we go to a conference room in the office, or do we go to a hotel, or do we go to a really cool like coffee shop that's like got an awesome event space in the back, and there's a barista bubbling in the outside. So the thing that I come back to, it's like, not only to your point around the appreciation of facilitators and what we can bring forth, but also there's now an understanding that this stuff is possible and the potential that it can unlock. So there's like, I'm just finding I don't have to educate folks as much when about a year ago they were like, this can't be done remotely. Let's just wait and put it off. And our whole thing was, don't let your innovation wait.
Yeah, I totally agree. And still, I think that even more important than the moment at the barista are these moments of turning to your neighbor. And this is as important for education as it is for working from home, where we meet at the coffee machine and can quickly ask a question, or in a workshop or meeting where we usually, before we say something out loud, we try to find someone's look, we exchange a look, or we turn to our neighbor to just double check whether it's not maybe stupid what we're about to say. And I think this is something that we still underestimate, and it's something that has to be intentionally designed in order to bridge this gap between remote work and in-person work, and to stop missing it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point around the nudges, the eye contact, because when we have folks in the room that we have a high degree of trust with, that we know they've got our back. We just even exchanging a quick glance can be a subconscious cue that, oh wow, okay, I'm not in this alone. And I don't think we get that in the Zoom space, and those things have to be intentionally designed in.
Exactly, because everything needs to be explicit. If I'm in a Zoom room with 20 other people, or even only with 5, I cannot just start to blabber. I think before I speak. Well, some people don't. The larger the group gets and the more professional or formal it gets. And I think that's something that still many of those who host online meetings forget. So they ask a question and they wonder why nobody answers. Or they ask into the group, does anyone have questions? And they wonder why nobody says something, because we are missing these, just even if it's just 30 seconds or 1 minute, put the people into a breakout room, give them this minute to just double check with a peer, to have this turn to your neighbor moment. And I think this is something that, we can further explore.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the connection is so crucial, and I feel like the Zooms, the Teams, all these systems have really robbed us of connection. And we can certainly tune in, dial in, and get some AV, but there's a lot of senses that we lose out on.
Yeah, and all the uncertainty. And I think this moment, we were suddenly remote, and it just revealed all the processes that weren't defined before, all the communication channels that weren't defined before, where previously we could walk into someone's office and quickly ask that question. Now we have to be explicit. And I think this creates a huge amount of uncertainty, because everyone sits in their home office wondering, where do I find this document? Who is in charge? Which communication channel should I use? So all these kind of small things that suddenly blew up. And I think this might also be then the biggest challenge when we move to the hybrid model, where some do have access to this quick, informal information and others don't.
The thing I keep coming back to in the hybrid space is advice I've given for years, and that is, if one member of your team is remote, if you want good outcomes, you need to treat everyone as if they're remote. Because if I think back years ago, and this is like, back when, we first started getting conference telephones, conference room phones, like the Polycoms. And I think there was something before the Polycom came out, but, and the thing is it's when someone dials into that thing and you got 100 people in the room crowded around a big conference table, and what is the odds of that 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever people that are dialed in that thing actually are getting what they need out of that session? And especially if you think about having just gobs of people piled into a space and then a couple of people dialed in, they're not going to speak up and say, I can't hear. But do you realize how brave you'd have to be and how disruptive that you had to feel like you were just super important to disrupt that many people just so you can make it known that you don't have a great connection.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that those are the types of problems we have to solve for, is making sure that we create real equanimity across all participants.
I totally agree. And although there are many voices now raising, oh, we need to prepare for the hybrid model, I still wonder how it's going to work and how this hybrid model will look like. Because as you said, and I think not so much has changed from the moment where we all sat around this this conference call tool. And I think especially when we are coming back out of 1 year working from home, we will fall back into our old routines and will be even more excited to be in a room with other people. So how quickly will we forget about these, as you said, 2, 3 behind the screen who are dialing in from somewhere else, who are exposed to a degree that even there you need to be very brave. I mean, imagine a conference room with 30 people all in the space, and then 5 people on a huge screen with their faces on, being observed by the others all the time. You
Yeah,
need to be very brave for that as
I
well.
know, I know. I think it really comes down to the culture of the company and what's been cultivated and um, what sorts of maybe rituals that people establish. And how do we democratize the experience? I mean, even though we're in person, are we all wearing headphones so that we can hear what's going on? Are there moments that we design in that are a bit more asynchronous and like virtual versus like always using the in-person experiences? Like, are we mixing Mural and Miro and tools into the in-person experience? And the other thing I think we're going to have to think long and hard about, and this is the part to your point, this hasn't played out yet, which is why I haven't done much writing on virtual, because I want it to be practice informed when we do come out with a really strong stance there. And I'll say that there's even going to be stuff like companies are going to institute policies where we don't come to work on Mondays and Fridays. That is a version of hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
Our work schedule's hybrid. Some days we're in the office, some days we aren't. And so we have to have systems that work for when we're together and systems for when we're apart, and also systems for when some people are remote and some are together. And then you've got all different variations, right? Like, what if you have one node where you've got 10 people and then all the other nodes are just single individuals? Or if you had like 3 nodes that have 10 each, that you're bringing together, so then you've got these pockets of 10 that have a high degree of fidelity. Your design is going to be impacted by those constraints or those phenomenon.
And I think the design of the systems we are using needs to be so sophisticated and thought through, because especially if we are coming in at different moments in time, and hopefully we'll rely more on asynchronous work, because I think that's one tremendous takeaway from this working from home time, that we don't have to sit in the same room to do the basic brainstorm. We can do this beforehand on Mural or Miro, and then really talk about the important stuff when we come together. But in order to bring all this information together, in order to know who's doing what, when, and where to find the information and how to follow up, we need integrated systems. And I think this is a part that very few teams have or organizations have thought about. It's a new level of complexity, I think.
100%. And it makes me think of Conway's Law, which is not exactly what you're talking about, but it's like right in there, like right up next to, entangled into what you're unpacking right now. And if the way that organizations structure themselves directly impact any system that organization will build. And Conway's Law is really focused more on software, right? The software system, the way you organize your people is going to directly impact the software, how the architecture of the software you build. Because if you're highly distributed, then your software is going to have to be pretty distributed, because it would be dysfunctional to try to build it in any other way, right? And so if we think about the human structures that we create and reporting structures and how we organize as an institution, that will impact how we're able to show up in these hybrid and remote event meetings.
And I think that the way how we organize our meetings, and as you mentioned, the rituals of how we work together, is also a perfect reflection of the organizational culture. So I think you can perfectly adjust this model from software to meeting culture, or to meetings, how they're designed.
Absolutely. And I think it's because if you think about my example previously around if is it 3 different offices with 10 people each, that's going to impact your decisions on how you host that hybrid meeting. Basically, are we doing 3 breakouts that are geographically oriented, and we're in the room together, working in our breakout session, and then the remote piece is where we come together and we share out and we show progress and we integrate. Well, then if that's the case, then how these people are geographically located and distributed are going to impact who's on what teams, and these things have a huge impact, and I think that's honestly where HR can play a big role going forward in the future of companies. And I think I've seen a trend over the years of seeing HR professionals show up at design thinking conferences, and I really hope that my vision that HR could reinvent itself over the next 5 to 10 years.
Definitely. I think, the HR topic is might be an entire different conversation.
It is, I know.
What I have experienced over and over again with HR is the constant conflict between HR wanting and aiming a seat at the leadership table, which they must because they're in charge of the most important resource of the company. But still, very often the leadership then says, oh, HR, they don't understand the business. So there seems to be a constant miscommunication. But I think if HR really moves into the direction as you envision it, where they use like design thinking techniques to really understand, to get to the core, to bring people together and enhance this resource, which are the employees. This can be a nice HR revolution where they get also heard by the leadership in a different way.
I love it, HR revolution. And we are just a few minutes over, so I'm going to take us out today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Myriam, and wish you the best of luck for your round 2 of Never Done Before. It's pretty exciting. Sounds like it's going to be a year-long program this year, so hope that goes really well and we get a chance to talk again soon.
Thank you, Douglas. Have a nice day.